The foundation of lies, Alina Vasquez adjusted her worn cardigan as she climbed the stairs to the 20th floor, balancing a thermos of coffee and a brown bag lunch. The elevator in their apartment building had been broken for months, and Marcus always said they couldn't afford to move somewhere better. She didn't mind the climate, gave her time to think about the algorithms she'd been perfecting in their cramped home office. Working late into the night after her shifts at the university lab, for 3 years, she'd believed they were barely scraping by. Marcus would come home with stories of failed job interviews and rejected proposals, his shoulders sagging with apparent defeat. "The market's tough, mi amor," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "But we'll make it through together." Lena would nod, tightening their budget further, taking on extra tutoring sessions, and pouring her brilliant mind into projects she hoped might someday pay off. That morning felt different. Marcus had left early, mumbling something about a consultation meeting. But Alina had found a forgotten business card in his jacket pocket sleek, expensive cardstock with Chen Innovations embossed in gold. The address led her here, to this gleaming office building in the heart of the financial district. She pushed through glass doors into a lobby that screamed success, marble floors, contemporary art, and a receptionist wearing what Alina recognized as a designer blazer. This wasn't the kind of place where struggling entrepreneurs met for coffee and desperate networking. "I'm looking for Marcus Chen," Alina said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Conference room 12, the receptionist replied without looking up. "The board meeting should be wrapping up soon." "Board meeting." Elena's stomach dropped. I followed. The signs down a hallway lined with awards and framed articles. Through a glass wall, she saw him, her husband, Marcus, standing at the head of a polished conference table, gesturing confidently at a presentation screen. He wore a tailored suit she'd never seen before, and his entire demeanor radiated authority and success. On the screen was her work. The machine learning framework she'd spent 18 months developing in their kitchen. The predictive model she'd shown him just last week. Her algorithms, her code, her breakthrough, but with his name. On every slide, "The market applications are limitless," Marcus was saying to a room full of executives. "This proprietary system will revolutionize how we approach data analysis. I've been developing it for over 2 years. Lena's hand tightened on the door handle. 2 years ago, she'd been the one staying up until dawn, debugging code while Marcus claimed he was job hunting. She'd been the one excitedly sharing her progress, asking for his input, trusting him with her most innovative ideas. A woman at the table, Sira Kim according to her name, played in approvingly. "Ah, Marcus, this is exactly the kind of cutting-edge work that will secure our Series B funding. You've outdone yourself." Alina stepped into the room. "Excuse me." Every head turned. Marcus's face went white, his confident smile freezing in place. The presentation clicker slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the table. "Lena," he stammered. "What are you? How did you?" "I was wondering the same thing," she said, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. She walked calmly to the screen, her worn sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor. "This is fascinating work, Marcus, particularly since I wrote every line of this code." The room erupted in murmurs. Sarah Kim leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Alina turned to face the table, her chin raised. "I'm Alina Vasquez. I'm also Mrs. Chen, though apparently that's not common knowledge here." She looked directly at Marcus, whose face had gone from white to gray. "And this entire presentation is based on my research, my algorithms, and my innovations, all of which my husband has apparently been claiming as his own, while lying to me about being unemployed." The silence that followed was deafening. Opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. But Alina was done listening to his lies. She turned back to the executives, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I have documentation, timestamps, and witnesses to prove every algorithm in this presentation originated from my work. The question is, what else has he been lying about?" The unraveling the law office of Morrison and Associates felt like a sanctuary compared to the sterile corporate environment, where Elena's world had shattered 3 days earlier. James Morrison, a silver-haired attorney with kind eyes, spread documents. Across his mahogany desk while Elena sat rigidly in the leather chair, her laptop bag clutched in her lap like armor. "Mrs. Chunor, would you prefer Vasquez?" he asked gently. "Vasquez," Elena said firmly. "I'm going back to my maiden name." James nodded, making a note. "Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've provided, we have a strong case for it. Intellectual property theft. However, I need you to understand the challenges ahead. Marcus has been building this company for months, possibly years. He has investors, employees, contracts." Elena's jaw tightened. "Built on my work, my ideas." "Yes, but proving that in court requires meticulous documentation." James leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about Dr. Patricia Wells." The mention of her former mentor's name made Elena's chest tighten. Patricia had been more than an advisor. During Elena's graduate studies, she'd been a champion, encouraging Elena to push boundaries and think beyond conventional solutions. But Elena had lost touch with her after graduation, too caught up in her relationship with Marcus, and too proud to admit she wasn't using her talents. "She was my thesis advisor at MIT, Elena said quietly. "She always believed in my work, even when I doubted myself." "I called her yesterday," James said, sliding a folder across the desk. "She remembers you very well. In fact, she kept copies of all your research proposals and preliminary algorithms from your time there. She also mentioned that you presented several of these concepts at graduate seminars with timestamps and witness signatures." Elena opened the folder with trembling hands. There it was, her original work, documented and dated, proving she'd been developing these ideas years before Marcus ever saw them. Her vision blurred as she recognized her own handwriting in the margins, her professor's encouraging comments, the academic rigor she'd abandoned for love. "There's more," James continued. "Dr. Wells has agreed to serve as an expert witness. She's also offered you something else, a research position at the university's new innovation lab. Full funding. Your own team? Complete creative control." Elena looked up sharply. "She what?" She said, and I quote, "Elena Vasquez is the most brilliant mind I've ever mentored. And it's time she stopped hiding her light under someone else's bushel." For the first time in days, Elena felt something other than betrayal and rage. It felt possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Elena, please call me. I can explain everything. We can work this out." She showed the message to James, who shook his head. "Don't respond. Not yet. He's been calling constantly," Elena said, "showing up at our apartment, sending flowers. He keeps saying it was just business, that he never meant to hurt me." "What he meant doesn't matter," James said firmly. "What matters is what he did. He systematically stole your intellectual property, lied to you about his financial situation, and built a company on your innovations while keeping you in poverty." Elena's phone rang. Marcus again. This time, she powered it off completely. "I want to understand something," she said slowly. "If Marcus has been doing this for years, using my work to build his company, what does that mean for everything else?
Ow!
Our finances? Our home? Our marriage?" James's expression grew grave. "That's what we need to investigate. If he's been lying about his employment and income, there could be hidden assets, undisclosed accounts, fraudulent tax filings. You may be entitled to much more than just intellectual property rights." Elena stood and walked to the window, looking down at the busy street below. People hurried past with purpose, carrying briefcases and talking on phones, building careers and chasing dreams. She'd forgotten what that felt like to have ambition, to believe in her own worth. "Dr. Wells wants to see me," she said, not turning. "Around tomorrow, if you're ready." Elena nodded, still staring out the window. Marcus had taken 3 years of her life, her trust, and her work. But he hadn't taken her mind, her talent, or her determination. Those were still hers, and she was finally ready to use them. "Schedule a meeting," she said, turning back to James with new resolve in her voice, "and file whatever paperwork we need to file." Marcus wanted to build an empire on my ideas. She picked up her laptop bag, holding it with new purpose. "Time to show him what I can build with them myself." The Counter-Strikezo Martinez had built her reputation on exposing corporate fraud. But the story Elena brought her was different. Sitting in the cramped newsroom of Tech Truth Weekly, surrounded by empty coffee cups and towers of documents, Zoe studied Elena's evidence with the intensity of a detective solving a murder case. "This is bigger than intellectual property theft," Zoe said, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. "Your husband didn't just steal your algorithms. He created an entire false identity as an innovator. He's defrauded investors, employees, even his business partner Sarah Kim." Elena's sister Rebecca shifted in her chair, her designer heels tapping impatiently against the floor. Everything about Rebecca screamed success, from her perfectly styled hair to her tailored power suit. She'd built her own marketing consultancy from nothing. And Elena had always felt intimidated by her sister's ruthless business acumen. "The question is timing," Rebecca said, her voice sharp and calculating. "We can't just expose Marcus and hope for the best. Elena needs to be positioned as the solution, not just the victim." Zoe nodded approvingly. "I like how you think. What did you have in mind?" Rebecca pulled out her tablet, swiping through what looked like business plans and market analysis. "While Elena's been gathering legal evidence, I've been doing research. Chen Innovations has 3 major contracts pending, worth about $12 million combined. Their biggest competitor just lost their lead developer to a scandal. The market is wide open." Lena stared at her sister. "Rebecca, what are you saying?" "I'm saying we don't just take Marcus down," Rebecca replied, her eyes gleaming. "We replace him. You launch your own company the same day Zoe's article goes live. I've already identified potential investors who've been burned by Marcus's type before they'll love backing the real innovator." Zoe leaned forward, intrigued. "Coordinated exposure and launch. It's risky, but it could work." Lena felt overwhelmed. "I don't know anything about running a company. I'm a researcher, not a CEO." "You're a brilliant researcher who's been underestimating herself for years," Rebecca countered. "And you won't be alone. We'll handle the business side, marketing, operations. You focus on what you do best." Dovation. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena's life transformed into a whirlwind of preparation. She worked 18-hour days refining her algorithms, preparing presentations, and learning business terminology that felt foreign on her tongue. Rebecca was relentless, scheduling meetings with potential investors, registering their company Vasca's solutions, and designing a brand identity that emphasized authenticity and ethical innovation. Zoe, meanwhile, conducted interviews with former Chen Innovations employees who'd grown suspicious of Marcus's claims. She uncovered a pattern of taking credit for others' work, not just Elena's. Sarah Kim, when confronted with evidence, admitted she'd had doubts, but had been afraid to speak up. "He was so convincing," Sarah told Zoe during a recorded interview. "He had documentation, presentations, technical knowledge. I never imagined someone would lie so systematically about their own capabilities." The night before the article's publication, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood in her small apartment, the same one, where she'd unknowingly developed the technology that made Marcus rich, and stared at her laptop screen. Tomorrow, everything would change. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're planning. Don't do this, Elena. You'll destroy everything we built together." Emelina deleted the message without responding. There was no we anymore. There never had been. At 6 a.m., Zoe's article went live. The brilliant woman behind the stolen empire. How Marcus Chen built his company on his wife's hidden genius. Within hours, it was trending on social media, shared by tech leaders and women's advocacy groups alike. By noon, Lena's phone was ringing. Non-stop investors, journalists, former Chen Innovations employees wanting to jump ship. Rebecca fielded the calls with professional efficiency, while Elena focused on what mattered, the technology. Marcus called once, his voice desperate and angry. "You've ruined everything," he said. "Years of work gone." "Years of work," Elena replied calmly. "And I'm just getting started." She hung up and turned to Rebecca, who was ending another call with a potential client. "Well?" Elena asked. Rebecca smiled, the same fierce smile she'd worn when they were kids, and she'd defended. "Elena from Playground Bullies. We just landed our first major contract. It's $12 million over 3 years." She paused dramatically. "From one of Marcus's former clients?" Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Pure, exhilarating possibility. Marcus had built his empire on her foundation, but now she was building her own, and this time, she was building it to last. Rising from the ruins 6 months after the article broke, Lena stood in the sleek conference room of her new company headquarters. Watching her reflection in the floor, 2 ceiling windows, the woman staring back at her barely resembled the timid wife who had discovered her husband's betrayal. This woman wore confidence like armor, her shoulders straight, her voice commanding respect. Alex Thompson, her new business partner and chief technology officer, spread quarterly reports across the glass table. Unlike Marcus, Alex had earned his position through Murata, a former Google engineer who'd reached out after reading Zoe's article, offering his expertise and a substantial personal investment in Vasquez Solutions. "The numbers are incredible," Alex said, his excitement evident. "We've secured 8 major clients, hired 32 employees, and our algorithm efficiency has improved by 40% since launch." Marcus's company, meanwhile, has lost over 70% of their contracts. Lena nodded, but her satisfaction was tempered by the magnitude of what lay ahead. Today's board meeting would determine whether they could secure the Series A funding needed to expand internationally. The investor panel, led by the formidable Diana Chang of Quantum Ventures, had a reputation for tough questions and tougher standards. "Are you ready for this?" Alex asked, noticing her contemplative mood. "I have to be," Elena replied. 18 months ago, I was tutoring college students to pay rent. Now I'm about to pitch to investors who control hundreds of millions in funding." Rebecca burst through the conference room doors, her energy infectious as always. "The investors are here early," she announced. "Diana Chang wants to tour the development lab before the formal presentation." Elena's heart skipped. The lab was her pride, a space where innovation flourished without the toxic culture of stolen credit and hidden agendas. Her team of 12 developers, data scientists, and AI specialists worked in an environment of radical transparency, where every contribution was acknowledged and every voice was heard. Diana Chang was exactly as intimidating as her reputation suggested. A woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that seemed to calculate profit margins with every glance. She moved through the lab with surgical precision, asking technical questions that would have stumped most CEOs. "Explain the core differentiation of your machine learning approach," Diana said, stopping at Elena's workstation. Elena felt the familiar surge of confidence that came when discussing her work. "Traditional algorithms treat data points as isolated variables," she began, pulling up her code on the monitor. "My approach recognizes patterns in the relationships between variables, creating a more intuitive and adaptive learning system." She demonstrated the algorithm in real time, showing how it could predict market trends with 87% accuracy compared to the industry standard of 62%. Diana's poker face never changed, but Elena caught a flicker of genuine interest in her eyes. "This technology was developed entirely under your leadership?" Diana asked. "Every line of code," Elena confirmed. "Though I should clarify, my team has contributed significant improvements and optimizations. Unlike some companies, we believe in giving credit where it's due." The subtle reference to Marcus wasn't lost on anyone. Diana's lips curved in what might have been approval. The formal presentation took place in the main conference room, with Diana's investment team asking probing questions about scalability, market competition, and long-term vision. Lena fielded each inquiry with growing confidence, supported by Alex's technical expertise and Rebecca's market analysis. "What happens when Marcus Chen attempts a comeback?" asked one investor, a sharp-featured man who'd clearly done his research. "He still has name recognition and industry connections." Lena had been expecting this question. "Marcus built his reputation on stolen work and false promises," she said calmly. "When clients compare his actual capabilities to ours, the choice becomes obvious. In fact, we've already hired 7 of his former employees, including his head of development." It was true. As Chen Innovations crumbled under the weight of exposed fraud and lost contracts, Elena had positioned Vasquez Solutions as a haven for ethical innovators. She offered competitive salaries, equity stakes, and something Marcus never could, authentic leadership. After 2 hours of intense questioning, Diana called for a brief recess. Alina stepped onto the building's rooftop terrace. Needing air and space to process the morning's intensity, Alex joined her, loosening his tie. "You were brilliant in there," he said. Diana Chang doesn't usually spend that much time on technical details unless she's seriously interested. Elena's phone buzzed with a news alert. Marcus had been arrested for securities fraud, his company. Officially filing for bankruptcy, she felt no satisfaction, only a profound sense of closure. "You know what's strange?" she said to Alex. "A year ago I would have felt sorry for him. Now I just feel ... free." 15 minutes later, Diana Chang emerged onto the terrace with a document in her hand and an expression Alina couldn't read. "Quantum Ventures has decided to lead your Series A funding round," Diana announced without preamble. $25 million, with the potential for additional investment based on performance milestones. Elena's knees nearly buckled. Let out a whoop of celebration that echoed across the city skyline. "There's one condition," Diana continued, her tone serious. "We want you to consider acquisition offers carefully. You've built something valuable, and there will be pressure to sell. Don't let anyone convince you to give up control of what you've created." Lena extended her hand to Diana, her grip firm and sure. "I've already learned that lesson the hard way," she said, "and I'm not making that mistake again." As Diana's team departed, Alina remained on the terrace, watching the sun set over the city where her new empire was taking root. This time, she was building it herself. The crown she earned 2 years had passed since Elena's world collapsed in that boardroom, and tonight she stood on a stage that commanded the attention of the entire tech industry. The Innovation Leadership Awards ceremony drew the biggest names in technology, and Alina had been selected not just for her company's meteoric success, but for fundamentally changing how the industry valued authentic innovation. Vasquez Solutions now employed over 200 people across 4 countries. Her algorithms powered everything from climate research to medical diagnostics. And her radical transparency policies had inspired dozens of other companies to adopt similar ethical frameworks. But the numbers, impressive as they were, weren't. What made Alina proudest? "When I accepted this award 5 minutes ago," Alina said into the microphone, her voice carrying clearly across the packed auditorium, "someone backstage asked me what advice I'd give to other women in tech who feel invisible." In the front row, Sofia Rodriguez leaned forward intently. Sofia had been Elena's first hire after the funding round, a brilliant young developer who'd been overlooked and undervalued at her previous company. Now, she led Vasquez Solutions' European division, embodying everything Alina hoped to achieve. "In mentorship, I told them that visibility isn't something you wait for someone else to give you," Alina continued. "It's something you create by refusing to hide your light, by demanding credit for your work, by building something so undeniably excellent that the world has no choice but to notice." From her table near the stage, Rebecca caught Elena's eye and smiled, the same protective, fierce smile that had carried them both through childhood and now through business. Alex raised his champagne glass in a subtle toast, while Zoe Martinez, covering the event for Tech Truth Weekly, typed rapidly on her phone, no doubt crafting the follow-up story to the expos that had started it all. Across the room, Alina spotted several former Chen Innovations employees who had rebuilt their careers with her company. They looked genuinely happy, something that had been absent from Marcus's toxic environment. "Innovation isn't just about creating something new," Alina said, building toward her conclusion. "It's about creating something better technology, better work environments, better opportunities for the people who've been overlooked. When we build with integrity, we don't just change industries, we change lives." The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 minutes. As Alina stepped off the stage, award in hand, Sofia approached with barely contained excitement. "Alina, I have news," Sofia said. "No. 3 more companies just called wanting to implement our transparency protocols. MIT wants you to deliver." The keynote at their innovation summit, Alina nodded, but her attention was caught by a familiar figure at the back of the room. Marcus stood near the exit, looking haggard and older than his years. Their eyes met briefly. He'd clearly wanted her to notice him for a moment. Alina felt an echo of the woman she used to be, the one who would have worried about his feelings or felt guilty about her success. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who understood her own worth. Marcus mouthed something that looked like congratulations. Before disappearing through the exit, Alina felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. He had become irrelevant to her story. "What's next?" Sophia asked, still buzzing with excitement about the opportunities ahead. Alina looked around the room filled with industry leaders, innovators, and brilliant minds who now saw her as an equal, not because someone had given her permission, but because she had claimed her place. "Everything," Alina said simply, her voice filled with quiet certainty. "We're just getting started." The crown had never been his to give or take away. She had forged it herself, from her own brilliance, her own determination, and her own refusal to remain invisible. And unlike the empire built on stolen dreams, this one would endure because it was built on the unshakable foundation of her own authentic vision. In the end, Marcus had done her the greatest favor of all. He had forced her to discover just how powerful she truly was.